everyone. Welcome to People with Passion in Midlife Reinvention. They kind of go together. So I'm Karen Putz, and today with me, I have with me Jennifer. And I don't even know how to pronounce your last name.
It's Bugajsky.
Okay. All these years we've been friends. I don't think I've ever said your last name. Funny. So Jen and we met through a women's group that we attended for many years. And she has quite a story to share. And I think if you are out there and you are struggling and you think that you cannot find passion in the midst of the struggle, Jen is here today to show you that yes, you can. So let's start with what was the struggle? Because when we first met, you were working a corporate job and then you had just started a business. And then life turned upside down with a divorce that you didn't expect. So let's start there. Tell us about that journey.
Yes. So, well, I had started my business and left my corporate job, and in the midst of that, got divorced. So lots of life-changing things were happening. And I was at a point, I have 4 boys, and I was the breadwinner. And the business was not moving at the pace that I wanted it to. I came from a 6-figure corporate job and had a lot to replace to move forward. And so not only was I getting divorced, I had 2 teenage boys that hated my guts. I was needing to sell my house and not know where I was actually going to live. And then not having a lot of money coming in at that point. And it was probably one of the hardest points of my life. And what I actually did was I started focusing on embodiment practices and pleasure. And there was a program that I took, and you'll hear me talk a lot. I use a jade egg, which is, it's a tool that is used for healing. And it was one of those things that I used that practice for a good 2 months, but it was daily self-care. You know, like there's all these concepts out there about self-care, and I don't really think that we as women know what it means. Like we think that self-care is meditating and journaling in the morning and taking a nice bath at night. But there's deep spiritual work that goes along with that. And when I was at the toughest point of my life and was trying to figure out how am I going to make it, it was pleasure that brought me through. Now, at this point, I had not started dance, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this was some of those spiritual, physical, self-healing things that I needed to do in order to get myself into a better place. And it's so true what they say around from a mindset perspective. Like if you're really thinking and saying things like, I don't know how I'm going to make it, and my kids hate me, and whatever it is, right? We continue to create more of that. But these pleasure practices allowed me to shut that part of my brain off and focus on the actual pleasure component of it.
I think that you are touching on a topic that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, or the idea of self-care, actually experiencing pleasure and joy and passion. You know, we tend to put those off. So when everything is right, when things are perfect, when we're in a better mindset, but it's actually those things that get us in the right mindset.
Right, they totally do.
For everything else, including the adversity, the tough times, and all that. So we often have it backwards. We often wait for things to get better before experiencing pleasure and passion and all that, when it's the other way around.
Right. It's like we feel like we have to earn pleasure, that we have to be deserving of buying ourselves the new outfit or whatever it is, as opposed to allowing that to drive us. One of the talks that I give, I talk about the difference between fun, joy, and pleasure. And the way that the talk hits home is when I talk about the opposites, because we all know what fun, joy, and pleasure are. And most people don't want to hear about pleasure. They want to hear about joy, that internal state of bliss. But if you look at the opposites, the opposite of fun is boredom. The opposite of joy is sorrow. But what's the opposite of pleasure? Pain. Pain. So if you think about it, how many people wait until they are in pain before they make change? Almost the whole world. And what I want to let people know is that you have a choice. You can either wait till something is excruciatingly painful and you can make changes in your life, which is what a lot of women do. You get to a point where you go through the storms, you go through the challenges, you have stories to tell to help other women out there. But you can also grow and change through pleasure, because it provides that same directive. It's just you don't have all of the pain and turmoil that goes along with it. So if I had a choice to grow through pain or pleasure, I would pick pleasure.
When you think of that word pleasure, how do you define it?
Yes, so pleasure, it's actually a physical feeling. So I think one of the things that women struggle with is getting in touch with our bodies. Like, one of the things that I believe is that I don't know if I've met many women that love their body. There's always something we don't like about it, right? And our bodies were made to feel. We have 5 senses. We are actual spiritual beings living in a physical body, but so many of us don't actually live in the body. We live outside of the body. So the way that you connect more deeply with spirit is through connecting with the body. And you can do that through pain or pleasure. So pleasure can be all of your senses, and the actual feeling itself. So I think some people get misconstrued that pleasure is just about instant gratification, or it is just about orgasm. Now, those are 2 very important components, but they're not the only way to experience pleasure. The other thing is there are neurological science components that happen in the body when you physically feel pleasure, no matter which of the senses it is.
Yeah. Mhm. Now, the word passion, as you know, my favorite word. When you think of that word passion, how do you define it and what does it mean to you?
Yeah. So passion is something that you love, that brings you joy and fulfillment, as well as pleasure, right? Like, I kind of see them go together, because when you are fully embodied in what you're passionate about, you feel it throughout your entire body. You feel alive. So many women are walking around like zombies, and I was one of those. I mean, I was working full time. I had 4 kids that I didn't know which way I was coming or going. I just went through the motions day after day after day. And I think that that's the way that most women live, because they're trying to take care of their families. They're trying to give to their communities, to their churches,
Yes.
everyone else, and don't know how to take care of ourselves. And I think a challenge in that arena is we haven't had a lot of good role models to do that for us. So generations of women have been passing down, put others first. And while there's a great book out there, The Go-Giver, which is a phenomenal book about giving,
Mhm.
we have to give to ourselves first.
Yeah.
And
I
I think we
often say
forget that.
I often say that you can't serve from an empty
No,
cup.
you
You've
can't.
got to fill the cup and serve from the saucer. And I
Mhm.
say that all the time. You know, if you're serving from the cup, you're constantly having to refill it. But if
Right.
you're serving from a full cup and sharing the overflow, you always are feeling full and you have more and more to give.
Yeah. I mean, I've had so many people say to me, Jen, how do you do everything that you do? You're a single mom. You have 4 boys. You have a full-time job. You have a business. You are a ballroom dancer. You're a singer-songwriter. You write books. Like, how do you do it all? And my answer is passion and pleasure, right? I focus on the things that bring me pleasure. And I fuel myself on a regular basis that I don't see time from a scarcity perspective. Like most of the time, you'll never hear me say, I don't have the time to do something. Because
So make it
I
because
make
intention of enjoying
right,
this rather than
correct.
that. And that's the thing. When you live with intention, then you have all the time in the world because you have defined how you want to spend your time and you're not going to waste it away.
Right.
Yeah. Now, speaking of passion, you found something, a passion of yours that really you've been sharing it on Facebook. It's so clear to see the joy in your face. Tell us about that journey.
Yes. So it is dancing. So the funny story of how it began was I was actually at an auction for my son's school 5 years ago or something like that. And I had a date come with me and we were sitting there and he's like, do you want to go out on the dance floor? And everybody there was, I'll call it drunk dancing. And I'm like, I really don't want to do that. And he said, he's like, we should go salsa dancing one night. And I went, oh my God, really? You would do that? I'm like, I would love that. When I was younger, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to go country dancing. I used to go to Cadillac Ranch on Tuesday nights with a girlfriend, and we would just do country dancing. So I still have my country dancing boots that are 20 something years old. And
I still do it. I do like
yeah.
dancing.
And I remember leaving that evening, kind of declaring to the universe, I want dance in my life and I want a man who will dance with me. Because my ex-husband didn't care about dancing. Yeah. It was maybe a slow dance at a wedding, that kind of a thing, but nothing more. And I just kind of put it out to the universe and then didn't think anything about it. And a couple of months later, my social media business marketing coach at the time said to me, Jen, one of your next lessons, I want you to take a dance lesson for your business. And I was like, really? That's kind of bizarre, but okay. And she said, here's why. She said, the work that you do is very deep and spiritual and sensitive in regards to talking about sensuality and sexuality and relationships. And she said, I want you to see the business model of this dancing studio because they make you feel so amazing about yourself that you want to come back and purchase everything that they offer. And I thought, okay, it's kind of a crazy thing to do, but
You want me to dance and play? Sure.
I'm like, sure, why not? So, and this was about 4.5 years ago. My dad had just passed away, and we had just gone through all of that turmoil and family time. And I was finally in a place to say, okay, I want to do something fun for me. So I called her up and I said, I'm ready for that dance lesson. So I went, had the dance lesson, and of course, it was so much fun, right? And they're like, oh, will you sign up for our package of 5 lessons? And I'm like, sure, this is fun. And I was very frank with them. I'm like, okay, here's why I'm here, right? This is what I do. This is what I teach, right? And it's so on and so forth. And they're like, yeah, okay, fine. And then after my 5 lessons, they're like, okay, are you ready to do a competition?
Sure.
And it was just funny because what I love about dance is twofold. One, I love dancing in general, but I also love the lessons that dance teaches me. And getting more in tune with my body and feeling my body. So one of the things that I've done through dance is learning more poise and posture, because when you smooth dance, you have to lift your rib cage up and your arms. And most of us don't necessarily have a strong core. Exactly. And I laugh because my chiropractor says the same things, right? Where we sit like this, right? Like, how often are you actually sitting in a chair like this? Unless you're sitting on one of those ball things, right? Where it's really good for your spine. So there's so many lessons physically about my body. But the other thing is the polarity with men and women. So I have learned a lot in regards to masculine and feminine energy by dancing with different partners, as well as the growth between the same partner. So there are times when you're in a group lesson where there could be, 10 different people there, and some married couples come, but then you switch partners. I can feel a man's energy if he is strong, confident in his masculine energy. And I can feel the man who is weak and reserved and not masculine. And I could also I could feel it in my own partnership, but I could see it watching the other people. So I would see a man and his wife together, and they were not really connected. And then I would see him come to me, and I'm embracing more of this feminine energy, that it was easier for him to turn on the masculine because there was a feminine partner to help bring that out, as opposed to being with another woman that didn't have that. So it's fascinating to just take some of those lessons and infuse it into my business and what I teach. I actually mentioned that I am an author, so I have written a 6-book series. It's the mastery program is called The Sensual Feminine Life, but I happen to have, here's my first book. It's called The Good Girl, but there are 6 different books, and in book 5, it's all about polarity and letting go, and what does it mean to surrender. And I think a lot of times with women and men, we have this power struggle, right? Like, who's supposed to lead, right? Yes, you're a man, I'm a woman, but I can do anything you can do. But we were made differently. God made men and women differently, physically and mentally, right? And we're there to complement each other, not to compete with each other. And I
They
think,
complement each other.
correct, we complement each other and we're there to help each other grow. We trigger each other, which isn't a bad thing because it does help us grow. And then there are also times where you can have that person there for support in the process. And I believe that our society, our school system does not teach about relationships and how to communicate with others, whether it is a husband, partner, husband-wife relationship, a parent-child relationship, because
Everything
we,
is energy.
right,
I don't remember learning anything about energy in school other than biology. You know?
correct,
So this whole other level of learning that we've learned as adults about how we connect and exchange energy, and our energy is being used in our life. Nobody's teaching that.
right.
You know? So it's fascinating that you have found that through dance and been able to apply that in your business.
Mm.
And I do believe you had retreats, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Business. Can
Yep.
you talk about that?
Yes. So I host international and local retreats. Last year, I held a retreat in Costa Rica, which was absolutely amazing. And I will continue to do those. I also am starting to host more local retreats, whether they're weekend retreats or 2 to 3 days in the middle of the week, to just get away, because it's important for women to make the time for themselves. Interesting, and I don't know if I've shared this with you, one of the other things that I teach is a modality called chakra dance. And yeah, it's a combination of spirituality and dance infused together. It is not ballroom dancing. I'm actually a facilitator of it. And I was hosting a Zoom call just even last night in regards to it. And there are all these women who said yes to the program, but yet at the same time, they were like nervous to get started, right? To make the time for themselves. And it just reminded me that like, sometimes we need that sisterhood support system to help us say yes to the things that we want and desire in our life. We know we want it, but we're afraid to say yes. And it was just interesting hearing some of them share their thoughts yesterday and how they really want to, but yet at the same time are scared. And I think a lot of that is because of societal, cultural, religious, generational beliefs that are stopping us from moving forward, which is why we need to have a support system on top of the desire that we have.
Wow. So wrapping this up, what is the most profound life lesson that you have learned through all of this, through leaving your job, getting the divorce, finding dancing again, going back to corporate world, rebuilding your business, all of that? What is the most profound lesson that you have learned in this journey?
Yeah, I would say that finding your passion, your desire, your pleasure, right? I could say all of those as the same, similar, right? That is what drives you forward faster in your growth when you are not just thinking about your passions and desires, you are living them embracing them. And every time I said yes to desire, a new door opened. So it is following that nudge of it's a hell yes, right? Every time there's that gut instinct that says, I want this, oh, but I don't want to spend all that money. Okay, that's okay. Don't talk to me about the money piece. What is it that you desire? Even this new place I have here, right? This came from desire and it found me. That's the other thing about passion and desire and pleasure as well too. When you put it out there and you live in that energy, you don't have to work hard to find things. You still have to take inspired action, but you allow the universe to bring those things to you. Like dance came to me. My new place came to me. And all we have to do is say yes to ourselves.
I love it. All we have to do is say yes. Know your desire and say yes to it. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with me today. I really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me here.